All right, we are starting Mummy Week here in the month of October. So this is going to be part 1 of 7, and I believe this is going to be the last week of October. I very well could be wrong, but I believe that at this point I should have a series up for Dracula, the Wolfman, and Frankenstein already. So if you're interested in those, be sure to check those out. But this week we're talking about The Mummy, and today we are talking about the original Universal film from 1931, The Mummy. So this series, as I said, I think it's going to be the 4th one, and it's probably going to be shorter than a lot of the other ones because, particularly Frankenstein and Dracula, because there's no one source book that these movies all draw from. Some of them draw from different sources, some of them draw from each other or other movies. So I'm not doing any kind of comparison or ranking or anything like that. I'm just talking about the films, so hopefully these will be shorter this week. I wanted my other ones to be shorter, and it didn't work out. So, starting with The Mummy, we get some Swan Lake at the beginning. Some music from that ballet, which, I don't know, for some reason, I associate Swan Lake with Barbie. And I don't know why. There's an old commercial that for some reason sticks in my head for Barbie of Swan Lake. And I don't know if I remember seeing that at around the same time that I, placed the music that I was familiar with that Swan Lake itself. Or if I don't know why it sticks in my head, but for some reason, anytime I hear that music, I think of Black Swan, and I think of Fantastic Four, because the thing references Swan Lake, and I think of that Barbie commercial, for some reason. And so having it at the beginning of this horror movie, which I can see why people would consider it like spooky music. So it fits thematically, but it gets me starting off thinking about Barbie when I start this movie, which is just kind of weird. So not a knock against the movie, just kind of a weird thing specific to me. Okay, so we've got a cursed casket. We've got a time jump of 10 years. I haven't watched all of these yet. I'm kind of watching a couple, then recording a couple videos, but that seems to be a pretty common trope throughout these Mummy movies, is time jumps. Because something happens, generally the mummy comes alive and other people go away, and then the mummy comes back, later on, several years later. So that's going to be somewhat of a recurring theme. So I did not realize, I'm going to get ahead of myself a little bit, but the Brendan Fraser Mummy from 1999, that was my Mummy movie when I was growing up as a kid. We watched that movie a lot. That movie came out when I was 8, 9 years old, so I was big into it as a kid. I liked The Mummy Returns when that came out, and then I was an adult when Tomb of the Dragon Emperor came out, so that was one of those, which it's not horrible, but having such a high opinion of the first two because I was a child when I saw them, and then going to see the third one with a more critical eye, it's just oh, these aren't as great as I thought they were. But anyway, that's, like I said, getting ahead of myself. I did not realize that so much of that Brendan Fraser movie is taken or inspired by this original movie. So we've got the princess's name. Is it a princess? I don't know, but it's basically a princess, which in the 1999 version they pronounce an ox and a moon. They pronounce it different here, but it's the same name. It's Ankhs and Amun, I think is how they pronounce it in this one. And then the mummy itself, his name is Imhotep, which is, for me, that brings up the Imhotep scene from my classic mummy movies. So we got some similar names there. And then for a big part of this movie, like the 1999 version, the mummy is just around in a human form. But in the version that I'm more familiar with, everyone just knows he's the mummy, and so they call him Imhotep. Whereas in this one, people don't realize that it's him, and he goes by the name Ardith Bey, which is the name of the leader of the Magi in the 1999 version. So even new characters have names taken from this 1932 version. So I was pretty surprised at how similar these movies are. We have the mummy stole this ritual for raising the dead. So the basic plot is the same. Of there was the princess who, for whatever reason, was forbidden to have this love with Imhotep, and so after he died, he stole the scroll or tablet or whatever it was. Some of these are kind of blending together. For the purpose of bringing her back to life, but he was caught and mummified alive for it and cursed, and so now he's come back to life, and all he wants to do is reincarnate his beloved, which involves in some way a female from the modern day, whether that be the transfer of the soul or using their body or whatever. That comes to play again in multiple movies, even that are supposedly not connected. That seems to be a pretty common thing. So we've got the same basic plot as the mummy that I'm familiar with, which I don't know. It made this a little bit more approachable to me, because a lot of times, I'm not a film historian. I'm not, whatever. When I watch older things, a lot of times it's hard for me to follow. A lot of times I'm bored. A lot of times, just the way they speak, the words they use, the language that they use, I'm like, what are they talking about? And I gotta translate it in my head. But because this was so similar, it was just like, yeah, this is just an older version of the same movie, which was a nice kind of surprise. So we've got yeah, that's about the end of my note. I just kept making connections to the mummy film from 1999. So I would say, if you, like me, are a fan of the Brendan Fraser version and you're interested to see where a lot of those ideas came from, maybe check this one out. I read that the further sequels that Universal did were not connected to this first one. They kind of restarted. They focused on a new mummy, and then the other sequels all follow that one. So I guess it wasn't super well received. And according to what I've read, the British version from Hammer Productions also supposedly took most of their stuff from the sequels to this film, but the plot is still pretty similar in a lot of ways. So I think this works as a pretty good starting point for mummy lore. Obviously, with most mummy things, even still today, but especially back 90 years ago, you got the issue where the actors that they cast to play Egyptians are just wearing certain costumes, and that's what it meant to play an Egyptian in a movie back then. So it's not the most racially sensitive or culturally sensitive property out there. But as a fan of the 1999 movie, this was kind of a nice peek back through history and to kind of see where that idea came from. And I don't enjoy it nearly as much as the 1999 version, but now which I haven't rewatched that one yet for this series, but when I do that, I'm gonna have that history there. I'm gonna have that knowledge and that understanding of okay, so they tweaked it this way, and they took that idea from this, but then they changed this idea, and it's gonna kind of reframe how I see that movie. So I would say, if you're a fan of that 1999 version, give this version a watch. Check it out. If you're not, it's an old classic horror movie. If you are into things like that, Otherwise, there's not a ton that sticks out to me for this one. But like I said, I'm watching a ton of these at once, so some of them kind of run together. So I don't really have any negative things to say about it other than the racial and cultural stereotyping that it does. But as a movie, as what it is, thought it was fine and interesting more than anything else. So those are my thoughts on 1932's The Mummy. Let me know if you have any thoughts, but that's all that I have. Thank you for watching, and have a good day. Hey everybody, Sam Tom here. Just wanted to let you know that I have 2 channels. If you're watching my music content, I also have a movie channel where I talk about movies and TV shows. If you're watching my movie content, I have a music channel where I do song covers, instrument demos, things like that. So feel free to check that out. Obviously, like, share, subscribe, comment, all that YouTube stuff. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good day.